All right, let's go ahead and add a background to this. In this lesson, we'll learn about shapes and arranging objects. So I'm going to actually click, hold Shift, and then click page 5 for that demonstration earlier. I'm going to delete those pages so that we just have the one-page document here. So what if we want to add a background to this document? It's not like Photoshop where we can just fill the background layer with a color. We actually need to draw a shape. So click and hold on the rectangle tool here if you still have the ellipse tool from earlier, or just click once on the rectangle tool there on the tools panel. You can also press M on the keyboard. And what we need to do is draw a shape in the background. I'm just going to click and drag it along the bleed here that goes over the edge. Now it could go even farther, it just won't print out past a certain point because the area off here does not print. Now by default we have this yellow stroke, at least I do, and then no fill. I'm going to flip those so we have no stroke and then a fill, and then I'm going to just double click on that, and we're just going to choose some kind of almost like a paper looking color here. Mine is at 13, 9, 12, and 0 for the CMYK, the cyan, magenta, yellow, key, or black. And I'm going to click OK. Now the problem is this is on top of everything else, right? Whenever we create something, whether it be text, a shape, and so on, it just stacks on top of the earlier content. And we don't want that. We want this to be in the back. So what we can do is use the selection tool and make sure it's selected here. I'll bring this over a little bit so it goes over the edge even. And let's go to Object, Arrange, and then Send to Back. And there's a shortcut there, Control Shift, left bracket there. And on the Mac it'll be Command Shift, left bracket. And if I did just send backward, I'll show you that doesn't really do much. I'm going to use the keyboard shortcut here. See, it goes back a layer, goes back a layer, goes back a layer. So it goes behind all those other elements, but a shortcut to make it go all the way back again is Control Shift, left bracket. Or we can go to Object, Arrange, and right there. Now we have that in the background. Let's press W to see what this looks like so far. Or so we drew a rectangle and set it to the back for the background. And there are a couple other shapes on there. Now if we wanted to do an advanced shape, an illustration, we should use Adobe Illustrator. But we do have a couple options here with the shape tools. For example, rectangle tool, if I just click and drag it out over here, and what we can do is hold Shift for a perfect circle if we're using the ellipse tool, or perfect square if we're using the rectangle tool. And just like a photo frame or a text frame, we can click and drag the corner and adjust the edge there to resize it. We can hover over the edge, the corners, and click and drag to rotate it, and hold Shift. It'll rotate at specific angles. And so for example, if you wanted to add this as kind of a background below these 3 photos here, you could. We would need to bring it a little bit more toward the back though, of course, so I could press Control or Command left until it goes behind all 3 of those. Then we can press W to preview how it would look. I'm not going to keep that on there. I'm just showing the technique of just layering these images. And you can click and hold and go to the ellipse tool and click and drag this over here. And what's neat about these shapes is that we can add to them. For example, we can select the pen tool and either use the pen tool or just go to the Add Anchor Point tool. Just click and hold on to that to bring out that extra menu there. And I can click to add a couple more anchor points. And then we can use the white arrow, the direct selection tool, and click right on those anchor points right there to add some custom shapes. So we can adjust where these anchor points are. We can also adjust the path in between the anchor points and also the angle of those anchor points, those Bezier curves there. So if we're drawing some kind of bread or a sandwich icon or illustration here for this lunch special, we could draw that there. But again, if we're going to do that extensively, we want to do that in Illustrator and then place it in as an illustration. And besides the rectangle tool and the ellipse tool, there's also the polygon tool. If you click and drag, I'm going to hold Shift here. This is kind of that starburst that's used in advertisements and print media sometimes for a car dealership or something like that. When I used to lay out ads at a newspaper, we would use that technique. And you can adjust how many corners it has there. So instead of clicking drag, if I just click and let go, And you see right here, number of sides. You can adjust that. Let's just say 8 sides. And then the inset you can adjust, and then click OK, and then it adds it right there. And same thing for the rectangle and the ellipse tool. If you just click and let go instead of clicking and dragging, we can create a new object that is a specific size. Now we can add a little bit of personality here to this title. So in order to do that, let's just use the line tool. I'm going to press Command or Control plus to zoom in. And I'm just going to move this a little bit up with the arrow here. And then the line tool, I'm just going to click and drag. I'm hold Shift so it stays perfectly level here. And I'm going to set it from just the edge of that there. And notice this didn't go far enough over, so I can use the selection tool and click and drag it over. Alright, so let's go ahead and change this from yellow. I'm going to change that to black. And we can do some kind of personality in here. Let's just do right slant hash. And that's a little bit strong. It's kind of taken away from the text a little bit. So I'm actually going to go to thin, thick, thin. There we go. That looks a little bit better, I think. So the line tool just creates lines, of course, but if you hold Shift, it'll stay at those specific angles, like 45 degrees, 90 degrees, and so on. Similar to that is the pen tool, and sometimes students get a little bit confused about the pen tool, but once you get the hang of it, it's pretty easy. If you just click and let go, click and let go, click and let go, click and let go, you can create these shapes, and I'm actually going to press W again so we can see that. And so then we can edit it after the fact, of course. So if we use the black arrow, the selection tool, we can resize it as a whole or rotate it and move it around. And we can use the white arrow, the direct selection tool, to adjust points and paths and the curves of those paths. And that's just with straight lines. We can also curve lines with the pen tool. If you click and drag, and then click and drag, and let's just say I want to make this go back like a wave like that. If I just click here, see how it just keeps going along that trajectory? We don't want that, so I'm going to press Control or Command Z. What we can do is click on the most recent point here. That add a little part of the cursor shows up. I'm going to click that, and that resets the angle. So now I can click and drag and set that back that way. And we can actually join paths together. So if we have this here, and we want to join it over here, let's just say we drew it like that, and we want to join these two. We can do that if I just use the white selection area there and just click and drag around these two and go to Object, Paths, and then Join, and then it joins those two. If we didn't complete the shape like that by clicking on the original point. And what's really cool is we can combine shapes together using what's called the Pathfinder panel. So for example, if we went to the ellipse tool, click and drag some shapes out like this, something like that, and I can select it all by clicking and dragging around it all with the selection tool, and I go to Window, Object and Layout, and then Pathfinder right here. And then from there we have some options. A lot of these are same as in Illustrator. So Pathfinder Add, so if I click that, it combines them all, and so now the path just goes along the edge. If I click this one, it will subtract the frontmost objects from the back. So if I click that, I'll just subtract that. And then this, wherever they intersect, and that won't work with these objects. What you have to do is, I'll just click this over here, click like that, select both of them, and then just two objects, and wherever they're intersecting, then we made like a little leaf. And exclude overlapping is a little bit different. If I just click and drag one here, click and drag one here, select both of them, and I'm actually going to add a fill to these so they don't have any stroke, they just have a fill, and I click that and then it cuts out wherever they're overlapping. And then minus back is the opposite of subtracting from the front, so it just subtracts from the back. And by the way, we can also convert things to shape. So if we want to convert this to a shape, we can just click that there, and it converts those pretty quickly. Rounded rectangle, rectangle, and so on. So I'm going to click around all that, delete that. So a lot of fun shapes we can make with the Pathfinder panel and the shape tools. And of course, we'll need to put them on the correct layer. And so we, again, go to Object, Arrange, and then arrange them in the correct order. Now, another way to do that is to use the Layers panel, and we'll be going over that in the next lesson.